Look at the sheer physical volume of modern global trade. When a nation exports goods on a massive scale, we assume the infrastructure behind it looks exactly like this. India generates tens of billions of dollars annually in export earnings, securing its position as a major player in the global macroeconomic landscape. This chart represents total national export earnings. Isolating the textiles and traditional commodity sector, it accounts for a staggering 1/3 of that volume. Domestically, this single sector is responsible for roughly 1/5 of the country's entire industrial production. Standard economic logic dictates that output of this magnitude requires a highly centralized corporate megafactory model to sustain it. Yet India achieves this global dominance despite a complete lack of standard corporate centralization. The actual engine driving this output is the unorganized sector, a vast, fragmented web of small-scale, independent operations, heavily concentrated in rural areas. This is the reality on the ground. A dense, crowded traditional powerloom workshop operating completely outside the framework of modern automated infrastructure. To actually understand India's trade success, we have to map the disconnect between the massive ships leaving the ports and the artisanal ecosystems filling them. It is a unique economic dichotomy, a global export titan built entirely on a foundation of micro-level production fragmentation. It is easy to assume that large-scale, organized textile mills are churning out this massive volume. This pie chart shows the true distribution of manufacturing power across textile subsectors. The organized mill sector makes up a surprisingly tiny fraction of the overall output. The true engine is the decentralized sector. Power looms specifically generate roughly 80% of total textile production. India certainly benefits from a historical and geographic advantage in raw cotton production, providing a massive, labor-intensive rural base for the supply chain. But raw materials alone do not explain the export numbers. Global demand requires this highly fragmented sector to process that cotton into complex, specialized finished garments. The country's global competitiveness relies not on the efficiency of a few corporate factories, but on the aggregate output of millions of decentralized looms. Beyond textiles, the second vital pillar of India's traditional export economy is handicrafts, gems, and jewelry. Economically, a handicraft is defined by strict parameters. The item must be traditional in its nature, artisanal in its origin, and produced primarily through manual labor. Measured, focused tone. Creating these goods requires extreme manual dexterity and localized generational skill that machines struggle to replicate. This official classification document shows how industrial standards group these diverse goods together under a single sector umbrella. However, within this broad list, the high-value gems and jewelry category operates quite differently from general handicraft items. Setting a precious stone requires a level of precision that carries immense financial weight, sharply contrasting with the production of more utilitarian crafts. Grouping these disparate products under a single traditional label masks deep structural differences in their actual economic yield. Sustaining an economy reliant on manual and semi-manual production requires an immense volume of human capital. Across these traditional export sectors, the total labor force exceeds 10 million artisans. Breaking that down, roughly 5 million of those individuals are dedicated exclusively to the gems and jewelry sector alone. This labor isn't performed in sterile manufacturing plants. It happens in highly communal, dense workshop environments. This creates a severe structural vulnerability. Even in these high-value sectors, only 15% of the industry operates within a formalized, organized structure. India's true competitive advantage in the global market is its ability to mobilize this massive, deeply skilled, and almost entirely decentralized rural workforce. This presents a logistical problem. How can isolated, unorganized artisans possibly satisfy the massive, standardized orders demanded by global buyers? This map of India illustrates the answer: geographic clustering. It is the economic mechanism that allows for massive scale without centralized corporate oversight. Across the country, specific cities and regions monopolize specific artisanal skills, like Surat for diamonds, Moradabad for metalware, and Swami Malai for specialized bronze crafts. These clusters act as highly efficient regional aggregators, funneling millions of isolated outputs into unified, large-scale export shipments at major ports. This chart tracks the financial results. export earnings grew from 24 crores in 1971 to over 18,000 crores by 2006. Clustering creates a phantom corporate hierarchy. It delivers the logistical benefits of industrial scale while avoiding the capital costs of centralized factories. Relying on a fragmented production base carries significant structural risk in the modern trade environment. Eventually, these decentralized goods must enter the aggressive, unprotected arena of global maritime trade. Historically, international quota systems shielded these labor-intensive sectors from direct, unfettered global competition. The complete removal of that quota system has left India's fragmented production base entirely exposed to merciless global market forces. The sector now faces compounding pressure from rigid environmental standards and fierce pricing competition from heavily industrialized neighbors. Decentralized networks struggle to rapidly implement and enforce unified quality controls and environmental compliance across millions of independent workshops. This presents an existential challenge. To maintain its foothold in a post-quota global market, the unorganized clusters must modernize. The required future state is one of organized, standardized factory production, operating under strict corporate oversight. The very fragmentation that provided India's historical advantage, low overhead and flexible labor, is now the primary obstacle to meeting modern international regulations. India's future trade dominance depends entirely on a singular logistical feat, upgrading a 10 million-strong artisanal workforce into a unified, globally compliant export engine.